Part 4. Metaphysics. What is there, really? Metaphysics is a dark ocean without shores or lighthouse, strewn with many a philosophic wreck. Immanuel Kant. When unearthing the works of Aristotle, so the story goes, papyrus scrolls were found entitled Physics. The next work lacked a title. It became Metaphysics, meta, meaning, after. True or not, the title was apt, for the book dealt with the very nature of being. Metaphysics, it has been said, is the systematic study of the ultimate constituents of the universe. It includes ontological questions of what fundamentally exists as well as questions of the most basic relationships such as causality. Hence, we confront classic paradoxes of space and time and whether, in reality, there are distinct objects. Perhaps reality, out there, is not out there at all, but depends upon our thoughts, perceptions and classifications. That raises the metaphysical perplexity of mind, the self, the I, a perplexity so great that it merits a separate part, namely, Part 6. Here is a reality question, courtesy of Elizabeth Anscombe, when worrying at a Cambridge seminar, many years ago. She had met a chocolate with a wrapper that read, fruit or nut. Now, she reflected, a chocolate can be fruit chocolate, it can be nut chocolate. It can be chocolate that is fruit and nut. But what is there about reality that could make it fruit or nut? Such indicates the puzzling intermingling of our language, concepts and reality. Puzzles in this Part 4 certainly raise difficulties in our understanding of the identity of objects, of what constitutes an object being one and the same object over time. A little tale is that of the treasured axe that has been passed from generation to generation in a family. True, over the decades, its blade has often been replaced. True, over the decades, its handle has often been replaced. Still, it is the same treasured axe, or is it? Before we encounter the deeper problems of identity, deeper than that of the much-loved axe, problems that transport us from rivers to goats to degrees of decency, sea and sand, we meet the most famous tortoise in philosophy, here presented as the wealthy Mr. T. Mr. T needs to be handled with care. 33. Therapy for tortoises. Allow me to introduce you to Mr. T, a wealthy tortoise from lands of ancient Greece. Speak forth, Mr. T. Explain how you became so wealthy. Being but a humble tortoise, I was always laughed at for my slowness of gait. When I tried to run, the laughter turned to ridicule, sometimes even crude mockery. Other creatures sped by me, waving, cackling, calling me Speedy Gonzales. I was downtrodden, I felt truly rotten and rubbish. But then, my life changed. I discovered Professor Zeno of Ely, Zany, to his friends. Would you explain yourself, Mr. T? Zany, well, I called him Professor, at the time, of course, set up a mile-long race between Mr. Achilles and me. Mr. Achilles was the fastest runner in Athens. At first, I thought the professor was intent on making a fool of me, pulling my leg or tap dancing on my shell. But that was not so. You see, I was given 100 yards start. That was only fair, as Mr. Achilles ran much more quickly than I did. Let's pretend, just twice as fast so that I may easily explain. But how did the 100 yards start help? Presumably Achilles still won the race. That's what everyone predicted. I got amazing odds when having, as I thought, a mad moment and putting my faith in the professor, I placed some large bets on Mr. Achilles never catching me. What happened? The starting gun was fired. But before Achilles could win the race, he had to overtake me, you see. And before he could overtake me, he had to get level with me. True enough, but that was just 100 yards. Achilles raced forward to the point where I had been. By the time he'd completed that 100 yards, I had moved 50 yards further, running at half his speed. So, he had just those 50 yards to run to catch up. Indeed, but by the time he ran those 50, I had gone another 25. Well, so then he ran those extra 25. Quite so, but by the time he'd done that, I'd gone 12 and a half further. Yes, but the distances for him to run are getting smaller and smaller. Don't you see, Achilles could never catch me, let alone overtake me. Whenever he got to where I'd been, I'd moved a little further. Half, then quarter, then 1/8, then 1/16 of that initial 100 yards start. That's an infinite series. Those proportions, though ever decreasing, go on endlessly. 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 Ah. So that accounts for your wealth, Mr. T. Presumably, you collected your winnings. Indeed I did, sir, and in cash, all thanks to zany Zeno. He's brought me right out of my shell, and as for that cash, invested over the centuries, growth upon growth. Well, I'm digressing, sir. How can we ever manage to move at all? Zeno, gave us 4 famous paradoxes of motion, in support of his teacher, Parmenides, who argued that all motion and change are illusory. To reach Mr. T, Achilles needed to complete the endless series of half, then quarter, then eighth, and so on. For you to walk to the wall opposite, you must go half the way, then half of the half, then half of that half, again, an endless series. Of course, Mr. T has the same problem. He keeps tortoisely quiet about that, slipping back into his shell. How can he move to a place or even slip back into his shell? How can an endless series ever be completed? Yet complete such series, it seems that we must, whenever we move. Mathematicians often think they have the puzzle solved. They tell us that many series, for example the one just mentioned, are indeed infinite, yet partial sums of the series converge within a limit. The series of half plus a quarter plus an eighth plus, take the series as far as you like, well, whichever ones you take, they can be shown to converge towards 1. Achilles ran 100 yards, then half of 100, then half of that half, and so on. Hence, at the 200-yard point, he drew level with Mr. T. Similarly, the times taken to run those distances became progressively shorter, the partial totals also converging to a limit. The reducing size of the spatial distances was matched by the reducing size of the temporal durations. Many philosophers are dissatisfied by this mathematical solution, for there remains the philosophical puzzle of how we can ever complete an endless number of runs or other movements, even if, indeed, the spans of time are also reducing in length. It is all very well to talk about mathematically converging to, or within, a limit, but that is no explanation at all of how in the physical world we reach the limit. Movement is not at the heart of the paradox. Similar difficulties arise concerning anything extended, whether in space or in time. Consider an unmoving object, existing through any span of time. For it to have lasted for an hour, it must have completed an endless series of time spans, for example, half an hour, a quarter of an hour, an eighth, a 16th, and so on. Or ignore time and consider an object extended in space, say 1 foot long. Somehow that foot is made up of half a foot and a quarter and an eighth and a 16th and so forth. There is also the puzzle of how anything can even get started in its existence through time or movement through space. Take any time span, the object must first have existed through half of that time span. Now consider that half time span, it must first have existed through half of that half, and so on. One thought is that we need to be careful about what we mean when we speak of endlessly dividing or dividing to infinity. Talk of infinity may wrongly lead us to think that infinity is a place we can reach. Think of the bizarre claim that parallel lines meet at infinity. Just because we can conceive of any mentioned distance as being further divided, we must not leap to conclude that an infinity of divided distances actually exists. Perhaps the direction towards a solution is to distinguish between abstract mathematical representations and what is represented. A similar thought occurred when facing Hilbert's Hotel, Chapter 30. Consider a portion of any distance. The portion may be accurately represented by, for example, the fraction of 1/3 of the whole. That would seem to pose no problem. But it can also be represented by the endlessly recurring decimal number 0.333. Causing our bewilderment about how that physical distance could contain an endless flow of distances diminishing by a tenth. It is all very well for Mr. T to bathe in his wealth and paralyzing perplexities. We meet him again in chapter 97, where he challenges a misunderstanding of logic, but if we cannot resolve the puzzles over the divisibility of space and time, all movement, all division, all separateness, all tortoises, all shimmering tortoise shells, all fluttering pages of philosophy books, are but illusions. Indeed, all is one. All is one. 34. Tensions intense. While you read these words, the Earth orbits the Sun. A long time before your reading of these words, various rock formations changed and continents drifted, occurrences with long names with which only geologists are familiar. Numerous eclipses, comets trailing and stars A-shooting will occur some time after your reading, details of which only astronomers are competent to predict. In summary, things are happening, have happened and will happen. Saying the same thing, but differently, many events are in the present, many in the past, and many the future. Now, and we should be careful with such untimely terms, delete all conscious beings from the events. Let us have only non-conscious happenings, geological changes and movements of clouds, planets, comets and the like. Even, and happily, ignoring the complexities of relativity theory, there are puzzles. When no conscious observers exist, are some of those events still in the present? Are some past, some future, or, for anything to be in the present, past or future, must it, at least, be related to individuals having experiences, having a viewpoint? Presumably, we should insist that, even without conscious beings, events certainly occur. And if events occur, changes occur. Some states and events come after other states and events, after those which went before. In a universe without conscious beings, there would still be temporal relationships of before and after. But would there be any temporal properties of present, past, and future? Would there be tenses? Would there be truths to the effect that things had happened, things are happening, and things will happen? Perhaps we are inclined to say, no. The existence of a past, present and future requires a point of view, a view from where things are, indeed, past, present and future. If there are no conscious beings, there is no viewpoint, there are just events in a before and after sequence. Were we inclined to agree that, at the very least, we need a viewpoint for there to be any sense in the idea of events being past, present or future, we may become even more suspicious of past, present, and future concepts. What is this talk of viewpoint? Perhaps all that can be rightly meant is that some events are before, some after and some simultaneous with any given viewing event. If the viewers are speakers, then when they say that certain geological changes occurred in the past, all they are really saying is that those changes occurred before the current utterances. The eclipses and other changes that will occur, future eclipses and other future changes are examples of happenings after their utterances. Further, some of the Earth's movements are occurring at the same time as their utterances, occurrences now, or occurrences in the present. There is the metaphysical question here: are past, present, and future nothing more than our ways of referring to events that are before, simultaneous with or after someone doing the referring? More simply, is talk using tenses just talk about what is before, after or simultaneous with the talk? When we speak of talk, we are, of course, alluding to any event thought, a hope, a speech, whose content involves reference to what is taken to be past, present or future. Many philosophers have argued that past, present and future talk, and this applies to tense talk, is simply reducible to before, after and simultaneous with talk, hereafter referred to as before and after. Past, present and future gives us nothing more than that. Can this be right? If talk of the present or now is merely a matter of saying that some events are simultaneous with this talking, that these events simultaneous with this talking, are we not missing the factor indeed now not past or future? There are more problems. Events, occurrences, and happenings, events causing other events, all involve change. Does an understanding of time purely in terms of before and after capture change? Although there has been some recent publicity for Wittgenstein's poker, a controversy over whether, at a 1940s Cambridge Moral Sciences meeting, Wittgenstein, brandishing a poker, threatened Karl Popper, there is another, more significant, Cambridge poker, courtesy of McTaggart, a few decades before the brandishing dispute. For more McTaggart, please see Chapter 91. Consider a poker, colored red at one end and black at the other. Although it possesses these different colors, the possession does not carry with it the idea of its changing color, merely that it has different colors. Similarly, that the death of Plato occurred after that of Socrates and before your reading of these words fails to capture the change we have in mind, when we speak of Plato's death once having been in the future but now being well in the past. Consider now a black poker placed in a fire. It becomes red at one end because of the heat, still black and cold at the other. As the heat spreads, the black cold end will also turn to red hot, a change through time. The change is that the end that presently is cold and black, will become hot and red, and, once hot and red, it is then true that it was cold and black. Events involve change, and change involves an item's properties such as being hot and red, being future, then present, then past. If that is so, what account can we give of events changing from possessing the property of being in the future to possessing the property of being present and then past? A natural way of understanding such talk is, as said, in terms of how the events stand in relation to the speaker. But that, seemingly, involves merely the before and after relation, and that fails to carry any implication of temporal change. Your reading of these words is after certain historic geological changes, timelessly and always after those changes. You are reading these words before the sun burns out, timelessly and always before that burning event. Events do not change their position in the before and after series, so it is difficult to see how that series can be all there is to talk of past, present and future, for events do change their status as past, present or future, being. Time, and the idea of time, present many such troubles. McTaggart settled for time being an illusion. He argued that time does indeed essentially involve past, present and future, yet he, McTaggart, could make sense only of events standing in the before and after relation. To say that time is an illusion immediately generates its own paradox. Even illusions seem to involve time, even if it is an illusion that the tortoise is moving. Recall Zeno, page 152, there are changes in that illusion, such that some experiences, as if the tortoise were at point A, are in the past, while at present the tortoise seems to be at point B. Here is another thought. I call it the paradox of time-taking. It is quite common to accept that, one way or another, what is happening now in the universe, at least at the level of planets and trees and clouds, has been caused by, and is in some way explained by, what happened in the universe just before. The thought is that the state and events of the universe a little earlier are sufficient enough to bring about the state and events of the universe now. Were they not sufficient, we should need to postulate something else to explain why the things that are happening now are, indeed, happening now. So, we have the picture of the universe in state C being sufficient to bring about the universe in state E. If that is so, there is a puzzle about why it takes time, and the particular time it takes, for E to come about, once C is present. Why is E not instantaneous with C? If there is a time lag, then it shows that something else must have been required, as well as C, to bring about E. For such a chain, the puzzle that results from the above reasoning is as follows. We are inclined to think of the states and events of the universe as standing in causal chains, over time. Yet this simply cannot be so, would have to be an instantaneous, everything happening all at once. A Big Bang, bigger, indeed, than any Big Bang dreamt of by the scientists. That's philosophy for you, and we didn't even leave our armchairs.